I'd like to call to order the Gateway Board of School Directors regular board meeting Tuesday, August 15th, 2017. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Cerrucci. Here. Mr. Lapsevich.
Here.
Mr. Nola.
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. Ritter.
Here.
Mr. Stubenbort.
Present.
Mrs. Warning. Here. Mr. Williams.
Present. Comments from residents on agenda items. Mr. Elms?
Bob Elms, Monroeville, 1303 Foxbow Drive. I was quite disappointed to see that we've done a 180 on the equity director. We're back to where we were probably 6 months ago. I don't think it's the right way to go. I'm disappointed that you couldn't find somebody who could fill a position who is qualified. Certainly the students in this school district are going to be the losers from this decision. If you read your equity evaluation that was done a couple of years ago, I'm not sure a part-time position is going to do all the things that this school district really needs to be done. The achievement gap has been here since, at least 10 years ago, and it's time to make some real decisions to move forward and close that gap. If you keep playing around with this, you're definitely going to need a PR person to make something like this look good, because it's not going to look good. There's enough districts around here that are struggling that are looking bad, and I hate to see Gateway looking bad, but we need to show a real desire to move forward and not just stay in the where we are. Sorry to see this resolution on the docket. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elms. Scott Gallagher?
He's on his way.
April King?
I too noticed that was on your agenda today, and I'm going to ask respectfully, and I don't mean any disrespect by this, but if I could have your attention, because I know you're looking through your papers and everything, I really appreciate that. I know that several of you are going to look at this idea of scrapping the full-time equity director position tonight because it's on your agenda, and I just saw your agenda. And I understand that it's on your agenda because you probably have had some conversation about it and you think that that must be what's needed and that's why it's there. But after a full year of committed community members attending the Achievement Gap Committee meetings and giving their time and giving their expertise, some of us, at those meetings, I believe it would be sort of a slap in the face to make that recommendation without A, having convened that committee to even be a part of the process to make that decision, the decision that was made based on their recommendation. And B, I think that it's not enough time for other community to have an input in this as well. I think it would be a grave mistake if we were to make that recommendation to scrap the equity director. If what's going on here in our district isn't enough, just turn on the television. Just see what's going on in our country. What's mirrored nationwide is mirrored right here in our community, and although each of you may not have had personal experience with it, many of us here have. So I would suggest that it would be a grave flaw to go ahead and undo that decision that was made based on that recommendation, based on the people who gave their time, based on a lot of the research. And I would kindly ask that you reconsider, considering what that would do in our community, what that would mean to a lot of the people here who were happy to hear about the equity director position, and what the implications of such a vote might mean to the rest of the community. Because what is said and what is unsaid is also what's expressed when you make a vote. So I would kindly ask that you each reconsider that, and that you do put full emphasis in an equity director, one that's full-time. I recall speaking with a board member that this is a multi-million-dollar corporation, and there are other multi-million-dollar corporations who have equity directors. And that seems to be the trend, and more it's needed to be the trend. We all want to see 100 on our SPP score. We cannot ignore that distance, and we can't do it without expertise. We cannot do it without someone to lead the way. I don't think that it's possible to not find an equity director. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Anybody else who wants to address the board on agenda items? Mr. McIntyre.
Rick McIntyre, Tilbrook Road. Just real quick on there's a couple things going on today that I want to speak on. Just real quick as far as the board resolution for the equity consultant, or however you want to word it. From what I could tell, it's word for word what was proposed by the administration in May. Is that about correct?
This was a board member resolution, so I don't know exactly if it was.
From what I could tell, it looks almost verbatim. I guess my question is for you, Mr. Short, is this resolution supported by the administration, or are you still committed to finding a full-time equity director as the board requested?
Throughout this whole process, because no vote has been taking place yet, we have been directed by the board to pursue a full-time equity director position. We have conducted interviews. That has been our goal, and we are continuing to move forward to that goal. And this board knows through conversations that the team here has been very involved in vetting a number of individuals, resumes, and conducting interviews at length. There's been a lot of time invested in this process to find a full-time equity position.
Okay, but moving forward, obviously, if this resolution passes, does it scrap the idea of hiring a full-time?
Well, that's
or is that still something that the board
is
directing
unknown right
the
now.
administration
At this time, we are still moving forward with hiring the full-time equity director. However, if a motion comes forward that eventually decides that we're going to move to a consulting position, and that changes, of course, the direction that we need to go administratively.
Okay. Is the transparency, I didn't see it on the agenda. Is that going to be another thing that's voted on tonight? Again, I say it every time, that it's something that seems like a common sense thing. I know that the argument is that you feel like it handcuffs the board. I think there's easy fixes to that. I don't think 4 days notice really handcuffs anything. I think it's pretty obvious that if there's something on the agenda and then something happens during the meeting and you want to propose something related to what was on the agenda, I think there's some easy wording we can put into that bill or to that proposal that can make that happen. And finally, nice, keep resetting the clock on it. As far as the 1 year shelf life thing, I'm having a hard time understanding what the motivation is for the 1 year limit, without having any kind of data to support why 1 year is the chosen date. You know what I mean? I've yet to see anybody come forward and say deep freeze after 1 year should not be served. Short of having that information, you have to kind of wonder what the actual motivation is, and my fear is that it's a step towards eliminating the food service department, because this is a policy that could potentially cause them to fail, and then sweeping in with an outside food vendor. And that's just not something I want to see happen, so, thank you.
Anybody else wish to address?
Hi, Lynette Howard, 2162 Ramsey Road. I'm also very disappointed that you weren't able to find an equity director. For me, at this point, it's more than an educational issue. It's a civil rights issue. I just wanted to let the board know that I did file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. I feel like there are people who applied with principal certifications. Their resumes have been given to the Office of Civil Rights and copies of their applications that were not called for a courtesy interview. So I do not believe that things were properly vetted to find an equity director. And I hope that the Office of Civil Rights will be able to assist you in that process. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, Dr. Gallagher would like to know if he can make the comment via phone since he's stuck in traffic.
Is he a resident?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
This would be a first. We're okay with this.
Is he on his way? 'Cause we
He was
could
on his
also-
way, but he's,
How far away is it?
Yeah, we can hear it.
what can he, is this it?
Yeah, there's a speaker.
Okay.
Tom,
Point of order, Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Is it true now that any resident, because we're setting this precedent, any resident should be able to call in?
I think that would be up to the school board sitting at that time.
Thank you.
Pastor Gallagher,
Yes.
I think they can hear you.
Please tell him.
Okay.
State his name.
I apologize. I'm actually sitting right down the road in traffic. I was hoping to be there in person.
Can you state your name?
Pardon me?
They want you to state your name.
Oh, the Reverend Dr. Scott Gallagher. I live on Greenleaf, Monroeville.
Tell him go.
They're waiting.
Again, I apologize that I was unable to be there in person. I just got rerouted a different way again. But I just wanted to speak to the issue that's at hand, and I guess is being proposed tonight, to go back to an original plan that as a board you voted down not to do in the past. The goal was to get an equity director. I don't understand why we're back to an original plan that members of the administration said pieces of that plan were not effective. So now we're going back to a plan that's partially been noted that it was not effective. Rather than sticking to what was originally decided by the board, I'm astonished that this is what we've come to. And I personally feel that the decision to even move forward with an equity director was just a way to appease the demand of the community with very little intention of following through with that. I happen to personally know a couple individuals that applied for this position, and to say that there weren't any candidates that met that description, it astonishes me. Granted, I wasn't part of any process or anything, but I don't know what we're doing and why we're taking two steps back once again to a place that we were 6 months ago. And I'm deeply concerned, especially in the climate of our country right now, to put ourselves once again and our African American students on the back burner, and that's exactly what this resolution would do. I apologize for the zeal and the frustration in my voice, but I'm extremely frustrated that we find ourselves here at this place again. And I would encourage us to go back to the original plan that was voted on, decided with very few dissenting votes, to hire an equity director. And if it takes a little bit more time to get someone, then so be it. Allow another 30 days in the process to make sure that we do what's best for the kids, not what's most convenient for us. I thank you for the time, and I hope to be able to see you in a few moments.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the board on agenda items? Please state your name and address.
Lynn Gable, Old Concord Road, Monroeville.
Thank you.
First off, I just want to say my son had graduated from Gateway this past 2017 year. He did well. I want to thank you all. He was a four-year, four-letter student in athletics, and he did very well. So he's off the IUP, and he's going to major in IT and criminology. So I'm very happy for him, and he had a great education here. Okay, so thanks. The next thing I just kind of want to go over is the food service, and that's kind of really what I'm here for. I did my homework a little bit, and I've been seeing this on Facebook, passing, back and forth on what's going on. And I checked with the Pittsburgh Public Schools. I have a family friend who is a compliance officer, and they hold their food for 1 year, and then they pitch it. And she works down on the 13th Street on the south side. That's where they make their food, and that's where they store their food. And then they take all their food into different schools. They feed about 20,000 kids yearly. Okay? So I just want to kind of get that point out to you. I'm not sure who's doing what. I did read your agenda. I came in a little late to see what was going on. But that is what they do. So they don't mess around. Anything that has a mold or anything on it, they pitch it. They're not messing around because it's a healthy, somebody, if they have allergic reactions or anything, I just want to let you know that. And then 10 years ago, my aunt, she was with Baldwin Whitehall School District, which is a nice, very nice school district. And she had left, and they brought in Earmark. And they were there for 3 years, Earmark. And they didn't like it at all, none of them. So they went back to the school teachers, to the lunch ladies rather, and they dismissed that program. So just kind of giving you that heads up of what other school districts, I'm not sure what you guys had looked at or, where you were at on this food service, this is getting passed or not. But let me just tell you one thing. I have 2 boys, and my oldest boy, he's kind of picky because he's allergic to nuts. But my other son, he's not picky. And he would come home and say, Mom, he was so happy to get to the high school thinking because the middle school food it sucked. He said it would suck. And the portions weren't there. That's another thing. The portions aren't there. You expect these kids to feed them, and they're going right to athletics right after. Mm-hmm. They're starving. They are starving. And salads, and my young son, he loves salads. He goes, how can they screw up a salad? It's so dry. It's nasty, and that's what he loves, chicken salads. So what they would end up doing was getting chicken patties. And by Wednesday or Thursday, they were so dry. I'm not sure how the process is of how many days they have to reheat it. They reheat it one day, and then, that's the expiration on that. But I just want to let you know, I think maybe you should interview the teachers and see how they like the lunches, and interview the kids, and maybe get feedback and say, okay, what do you guys like? What can we serve more of? Because if we're buying all this in excess, I'm not sure, we'll dispute the 3-year thing, but to be honest with you, if he can't do a menu, this is the food guy, if he can't do the menu and say, hey, we're going to use up all this food, we have all this excess, why hold it and get freezer burn? Just move through the food, accommodate the schedule, change it around, that people can use the food up quicker if we're buying all this. Pittsburgh Public School works on the federal, that's what she said. We just adjust the food, and they all get free lunches there. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep. All right, thanks. And I'm going to stay, hopefully won't stay too long, but I'm going to talk about another agenda. But thank you.
Thank you. I just also had another question because I noticed that on your agenda, on the agenda itself, it says that this was a resolution presented by board members. And I just want to clarify for everyone here that this resolution was not the resolution of the Achievement Gap Committee. So the Achievement Gap Committee that met for well over a year did not propose a $30,000 equity coordinator. They proposed a full-time equity director. So just to make clear that those 20 of us or however that met on that committee for all that time, this is not our recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else wish to address the board on agenda items? Mr. Gottman.
Thank you, I'm sorry. I couldn't see behind me. Curtis Lorraine Lewis, Burke, 805 Sweetleaf Drive, here in Monroeville. You're hearing the anxiety in my voice, nervousness because I stand before you and I think to myself, you're the example, or so supposed to be the example for our children. You have a position in this community that when you tell the truth, we expect our children to do the same. If you tell a lie, you do not expect, and I won't accept a child lying. We come in here and you pass, a resolution was made, things were in place, trusting that we were moving ahead, getting past this thing that you know color does play a role in this. As the past president of the NAACP, President Emeritus, I want you to know I am deeply, deeply hurt and offended that this is still going on. Valerie, you got on this board because you took a stand when a black man who worked for this school was losing his job, so to speak. I would think, especially with you, that you would understand where we're coming from, and they made it very clear, in light of what's going on in this country right now, the last thing we want to do, should want to do, is be a part of that is negative. We should be working together, united together, to improve as much as we can, possibly meeting the 100% that we're doing what's right by our children, leaving the politics out. And that goes for all of you. I point my finger because I'm saying, while I point at you, I've got those pointed back at me. I am really, really hurt. You and I talked. I thought that I had a relationship with you that was a board and my cross. I don't wear it as a symbol of dishonesty. I wear it trying to be the best person I can, and I expect when I give that to you, you would give it to me. Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. And yet, we come in here, and here it goes again. That's my daughter, April. Dr. King, by the way. I have to be concerned when I open my mouth and speak because she's an employee here. But remember, what we're talking about right now, she worked on this how many years ago and brought it to the school so it would improve what was going on, bring us to a place where all of you and those who were before you and those that are yet to come can say, job well done, I did it, we did it. I hope you think about that when we leave here tonight. Because I want to be able to say to somebody, Monroeville is the place you want to bring your family, where your children should be in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gottman.
Brian Gottman, 953 Garden City Drive. I'll try to be real quick here. As a new board member coming on in December, and with the school year starting at the end of this month, I just want to address the board. I sat with the Achievement Gap Committee and listening to what they had come up with. I've seen the research, and I sat at the meeting when we had the discussion about it and listened to your proposal and try to keep an open mind and see what was best. And at the end of the day, I felt that with 400 plus hours of research compared to what the board had, no disrespect, that's what you guys came up with, I was liking the Achievement Gaps decision. So when I saw it on here that they couldn't find any qualified people, I was pretty shocked by that. And so come December, when myself, Mr. McIntyre, and Mr. Kalkstein come in, we're going to inherit all the decisions that are made from here up until December. So I'm just urging the board that tonight and moving forward, that you guys make the best decisions, not just for, the students of 2 schools, but for the entire district, and what will work not just for today, but for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address the board at this time?
Hi, Amy Bear, Ridgeview Drive, Monroeville. I understand that this was going to be a process, trying to find an equity director and finding the right person, all these different things. But then to read on the agenda for tonight that there wasn't anybody qualified, I was just very confused, because one of the first things I did as soon as it was still in June, and I had one of the best in-services, or that it wasn't really an in-service because it wasn't through the school, but it was the best professional development opportunities that I've taken. And it was at it was through the Center for Urban Education. It was the Summer Educator Forum. And there was probably about 300 people in that room that were going through that training, and probably about 30 or 40 people that were leading that training. So to say that there was nobody that would be qualified to take this position is very, very strange, because the people that were leading this training, which was all about culturally responsive teaching, and now there's no one that would be qualified, even though this training I took was less than a half an hour away. It just seems really strange that there is nationally known programs at Pitt that certify people with through the Center for Urban Education, and they're not here. There's no one here in Pittsburgh that could, and people will travel for a position like this. So it's very strange to hear that no one was qualified. One of the things that always did strike me whenever I read the requirements was like the principal certification. The people who are going to take this kind of position and want this kind of position aren't going to be people who went for the principal certification. In case, I know you all would know how things usually go as far as, you become a teacher, then many people decide that they want to be a principal, and then maybe they'll go get their superintendent's papers. That's the path that person takes, because that's what's in their mind. A person who would be all for this culturally responsive teaching and go get their master's in it or something, they're not going to take that pathway of teacher to principal to superintendent and then this stuff, because both of those pathways take a long time to go through. So that's just one thing. And then when I was looking at the agenda for tonight and seeing some of those things on there that are just preposterous, like the tutoring, the 4 days a week tutoring and having the busing, okay, so instead of actually having the bulk of money being spent on education for teachers and the actual kids, you're going to spend a lot of money on busing for kids that you can't make every child stay in a school. You can't make them stay after school. So that's just kind of ridiculous to think that would be, you're not going to maybe even be getting the kids that can actually benefit from this. And that's not where the issue is. The issue is educating the teachers and the staff and how to help the children. It's not the children's fault. It's not something that's wrong with them. It's not something that they need a little bit more help. And I love that it said, too, that it was on the technology. So we're going to then sit kids in front of a computer and learn on technology and hope that that's going to fix problems with their teachers. That makes no sense. So it says the after-school program, in case you didn't read there, Ms. Rucci, it says technology is where that money is going to go. So 4 days a week, after-school tutoring, technology. So years ago, I would say maybe 6-7 years ago, I signed up to be a tutor after school, and I quit within a month, because what it was is they expected me to sit with these kids, these 7th graders, after school, give them, it's hilarious, it's in here the same way, give them a snack and a drink after school, sit them in front of a computer for an hour, and then bus them home. I quit that within a month because I realized it was ridiculous to sit kids in front of a computer and think it's going to be effective. So this is even more preposterous to think that it's going to close the achievement gap.
Anybody else wish to address the board at this time on agenda items? Okay, moving on.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask for a 5-minute recess, please.
I need George to take a break if you don't mind.
We'll have a 5-minute recess.
Steve wants to check some records.
Okay.
Okay. How do we get off camera and got the mics? Back. Anybody else wish to address the board on agenda items? Yes.
Jeanette Beagle. I live on Wiltshire Circle in Monroeville, and I just wanted to make a quick statement in asking about the transparency that's on for the agenda, and I encourage you all to please vote to move this forward, because we as taxpayers, parents of students, everybody involved in this community, nobody likes to sit and rewatch the school board meetings and something being thrown on where some members have a chance to see things, some members don't. It's unfair to your fellow school board members. It's also unfair to the people you're here representing, to the students you're representing, that everybody deserves the right to see everything, to ask their questions, do their own research, and then make an educated decision, because that's why we elected you all to be in these positions. So I ask that you please pass this resolution to be put up, because we need it. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the board on agenda items? Seeing none, moving on. Section A.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Can I call for an executive board session for a few minutes? For personnel reasons?
There's a motion and a second. We have a roll call.
Mrs. Cerucci. Aye. Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. Nola.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenbord.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye. This time we'll go into executive. Okay, we're back from executive session. Moving forward, Section A, minutes of previous meetings. I have a motion. So moved. Motion by Mr. Nola, second by Mr. Stubenport. Roll call vote.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. Nola.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenbord.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Section B, bills, financial reports, budget transfers, Mr. Schott.
Mr. Williams. Section B, resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors approves Section B1, list of bills, and B2, monthly financial statements, as listed in Section B at the Tuesday, August 15th, 2017 regular board meeting.
Second. Approved by Mr. Stubenport, second by Mr. Nola. Questions, comments on Section B? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Nola.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenbord.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Section C, items previously tabled. Do we have any?
None.
Seeing none. Section D, personnel agenda. Ms. Crump.
Mr. Williams. Resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors accepts and approves the personnel agenda items 1 through 8 as listed in Section D for the regular board meeting of Tuesday, August 15th, 2017. Under item number 1, we have 4 resignations listed. We have 1 leave of absence. Transfers, there are 3 names listed per the collective bargaining agreements. Number 4 is an addition of a position for social work and home and school visitor. Number 5 is a rescinding of a resignation letter, and that is contingent on approval of number 4. Employment, we have 3 teachers listed. Tricia Carney is going to be coming in at the high school, replacing Kimberly Ireland. Tricia brings with her 8 years of experience in special ed. Aaron Smith is for a home and school visitor and social worker. This is contingent upon number 4 being approved. He brings with him 7 years of experience and also working in the Office of Children and Youth. And Mary Jane Edwards is going to be for the part-time counselor who has 4 years of experience. Under B, we have a furlough recall. That's due to where we added the additional part-time position. So that's recalling Karen Montgomery from part-time to full-time. C, 1-year temporary teaching positions. Those are for 3 teachers who we have used, who come from our student teacher list that we've used in the high school. Supplemental contracts, we have a resignation and also issuance of department chairs and curriculum coordinators. Under Section C, volunteers. And number 8 is a purchase of a Comply online tracking software. This software will tie in with PAE TAP, our observation software, and it's a module that we can put in addition that will help us track all of the compliance issues, not only for clearances, but also for the assistant superintendents for all the mandatory trainings that the teachers have to use. This will cover our professional staff and our support staff, so that way Mr. Brown can use it for facilities. We can use it for athletics to track like the concussion protocols, all the things through that, so we can customize it and use it in each of the individual departments.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Nola, second by Mr. Studenport. Questions, comments? Mr. Nola. Mr. Nola was first.
Okay. All right. I want to preface what I'm going to say with just trying to be, open and honest with everybody so that they know and so that we think about these things first. It's nothing personal against anybody, actually. But I look at these things like, the supplemental contracts for it. Let's start there first. So that's section 7. So you got the supplemental contract. We got an equipment manager. I actually think we need an equipment manager, but that being said, we cut the equipment manager a couple years ago. Okay. We have to be careful with the way we spend our money. I mean, like, if we just constantly want to, spend more and spend more and spend more, we're going to end up where the other districts around us are. And we, prudently went through and made the appropriate, positioned ourselves so that we're in the position that we're in today. Like, we're in a good position, and the reason we're in a good position is because some of the efforts of the people, on the board and in administration that went through all of these positions and made relevant whether we need them, don't need them, need half of them or not half of them. I know we kept the laundry person, but then got rid of this, and you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of
Addition through subtraction for a number of supplementals that have not been renewed.
addition through subtraction. But my point is,
Don't interrupt him.
my point is, we just need to be careful just adding these positions that we have once gotten rid of. I think that should be more scrutinized, and I think that, we should express when we're doing those things. That's nothing against it or whatever. All right, that's the first thing. Next thing, number 4. I'm under the impression that we had a social worker and homeschool visitor last year.
That is correct.
And I'm under the impression that I guess we or somebody decided that we needed, that was too much for one person.
That is correct.
But see, I look at this and I'm saying we're adding another full person. So were we like literally a full person behind, or are we only like a half a person behind? And maybe we should be doing this in a different way. I'm not saying the person we want to hire for this may be the best person in the world, actually. And that's fine. And maybe we need to do the full thing. But this is just another example of, we went from from one year to the next, we went from a one person to a two full person for a similar type of job. And I know that they do a lot of things, and they're taxed and work hard and do all their things. But maybe we need to give them help, distribute the work differently. I don't know that this is required, and I need convinced that it's required.
I'm going to convince you a little bit. I just had to make sure I had permission to say what I wanted to say because it's kind of personnel. But so a lot of people out there don't, when we're in the boardroom, we talk a lot about having the right people on the bus. It's kind of a little slogan that I use, and I've even brought a little Matchbox car that's a school bus as a visual. You always want to have the right person on the bus. Well, we lost somebody in the school district that I think was the right person to have on the bus. Now, if you can bring that person back by hiring this second individual, you're getting a second win there, because now we're actually gaining back a really valuable employee that doesn't have to be trained, that knows our families, that's experienced with Gateway. So to me, that's an extra reason for you to support this position, Neil, is that we're getting one of the right people back on the bus who I wish never left the bus.
I agree, but you could do the same thing by just giving her help or distributing some of her duties. You don't have to hire and add a whole new position to accomplish what you just said.
Well, that's your opinion.
Well,
there's also the opinion of the majority of the board.
When in May's study session, we voted on a full-time social worker and a part-time consultant, and that was voted down, 7 members to 2. So it looks like we're kind of rewording hiring a social worker here and then taking it away from the proposal.
That is ridiculous.
It's actually extremely accurate.
That is, no, I believe that's accurate too. But not only that, this position, I don't know. I'm not convinced that we need another full-time person. I don't know that.
So
was this in the budget? Why did we not know this when we were talking about the budget? Like why?
Because we had a candidate resign, Neil.
We didn't know
over
that
the workload.
We didn't know that the person that was there was going to leave.
Exactly. How do you know someone's going to leave a position?
So we're doing this because she, I guess, threatens to leave. She actually did leave. So now we want to get her back.
No.
So we need to hire another person.
No, and it's just for the sake of transparency. When our HR director and our executive staff recommends a position, I trust that they understand what the needs are at administrative level. But during the interview process, when people looked at the job description, the new applicants also said, there's no way I'm taking this job because the workload is way too heavy for one person.
For one person.
Exactly. So our administration recommends 2 people. I don't have a problem with that, because now we have 2 people that confirmed that person was way overworked.
Was this on the study session?
No, it was not.
No, because this just came up in interviews.
Right,
How could it be on a study session 2 weeks
So they
ago?
should both be asterisk. Also, I mean, if this was something that was I kind of go back to, again, I wish we would have known about this. I do agree with Neil. I mean, we don't have any stats. We don't have any data as to, how many calls of help were going unanswered, how many things could have been improved upon. And if it's a workflow issue, it's a workflow issue. If administration's saying, hey, we need to up the manpower, I'm fine with that. But I just would hope we'd see a little bit more as to why, for instance, if we decide tonight we're going to add a Spanish teacher, right? What are the first questions we're going to ask? How many kids are in class? How many kids are enrolled in Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4? How many kids are in each individual class? Are the class sizes too large? Okay, that's how we base the decision as to how to add a teacher, correct? Why are we not using the same metrics for this?
And not only that, I mean, this worker, I'm sure that they're fine people. I'm sure that the one that was leaving is fine. I'm sure the one coming is fine. I thought both of them are perfectly fine. It has nothing to do with the individual. It has to do with planning. Like, if we knew that this was an issue, if we understood what was going on, if we knew that we needed another person, why, when the budget's coming around, when we're doing staffing, we just did it like a couple months ago. Why, actually, technically, it was only like a month and a half ago. Why didn't we, at that point in time, say we needed this? That's what's bothering me. We need to work better at planning, because I think that that's the problem. That's the crux of what I'm getting to. I'm not against the position. I'm I'm against the process
So do we
about
know
how we getting to these places.
Do we know off the top of our head? No, I hate putting people on the spot, but what was the date of that person's resignation, and when you started looking for a new position?
July 20th, I believe, is the date of the email.
So it's
And that was within the budget.
It's been 3 weeks.
But that was the budget time, wasn't it?
It's 3 weeks, Neil. You're
Post-budget.
You're being unreasonable.
Upon the resignation of this individual, we did conduct exit interviews, and during that time that we met with the individual, this was truly the first time that the expression of caseload came to fruition. And during that time, when we opened up the interviews and started looking for a replacement, almost every individual that we met with was just blown away by just one social worker for 7 buildings. So that kind of came as a surprise to all of us. And looking at that, we have an individual that was very well qualified, that had an opportunity to perhaps go to another school district. That's why, we decided to meet as a group here and disclose that information.
I'm going to interrupt right now. Mrs. Bungard, you're here. Would you shed some light on the numbers, what you've seen, what's been transpiring, I guess, in the schools with the need for the social workers that we've had?
Yes, Ms. Warning, I can speak about it. Through, as Mr. Short spoke about, when we had the resignation of the individual about 3 weeks ago and the exit interview, obviously some of the information was brought forth to administration, and we reviewed that caseload as well as the job description. In reviewing that job description and the caseload of the individual that had resigned, we looked into this further, and also looking in neighboring schools, and neighboring schools do have some schools have 3 social workers, homeschool visitors, depending on the caseload, and I can look into more specifics if the board would like that information. But basically, after going through the interview process, speaking with the individual that went through that exit interview, it is a need, and looking at our students, the need continues to grow. We have almost 3,000 students in the district, and all of them have some type of need. And for one individual to be able to get involved with the students and the families to the level that some of our families may or may not need, we need more than one individual to do that. And when we looked at this for a recommendation for the board, we looked at a K-6 social worker and a 7-12 social worker. So, Mr. Nolan, to answer your question about that, the individuals would split the district. Because when we're looking at even timing-wise, hours and things like that, to have a K-12 person, this individual was working many hours after school hours. This individual was making calls 7 at night.
Weekends.
So to divide that caseload and looking at specifically what she was doing, and she was going above and beyond her job description. I do have to speak on that. And she was really working with many of our families, and we felt that after speaking with people in the interview, speaking administratively, that this could be a position that could be recommended for 2 positions throughout the district. Again, focusing on our K-6, because we have, our younger children have different needs, and our 7-12 as well.
I agree, and I'm okay with it. I just wish that we would, in all the things that we do, plan better in this sense. You just told me you talked to neighboring school districts, and they said that. Well, why weren't we doing that before we had the problem? Like, we would have known that this person was having a problem last year. We shouldn't have needed her to tell us. We should have known it. Like, if we would have went to District X and they have 3 of them and we have 1, maybe we would have started thinking about it. And like, that's the type of stuff that we need to I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. I don't want to blame anybody, but we all just need to get better at planning and foreseeing what's happening, where we're moving, and how the district's changing. If we have more people coming in that needs these services, then we need to plan better for them. That's what I want to do. I don't like these things to just pop up like spur of the moment, boom, and then we need to approve it. That's the thing that irritates me about this stuff. I'm for this because you're telling me we need it. I'm okay with that. But I need us to work better, harder, at making these better decisions.
And I would agree. I mean, I think both of you gave great reasons as to why it's necessary. I just wish it was, again, the information was put out there. Because I know we had a very hot topic item involving another social worker, right? So if this information is saying, hey, this is not what was proposed there, here's what it's going to be used for, here's why it's necessary, I just think it is a lot easier to understand, comprehend, and for us to look at and do some research on prior to.
Now, will both of these individuals also be residency?
Home school visitor.
Yes, they're certified
Yes.
for both. Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
I've been chewing on this for a little while.
This is,
I-
okay.
That is, what is the scope of the school district? If there are troubles at home, like somebody's out of work, or the car doesn't start, or there's a hole in the roof, the washing machine needs to be repaired, the kids don't have clean clothes, should the school take on that responsibility by hiring social workers or washing machine repair people to go into the schools? It might not be our job to hire a set of social workers, because if we do begin to take on that role, then the question becomes, how many should we take on? 1, 1.5, 2, 5, 10 social workers? Where's the end point? That's not to negate the fact that people have troubles. Perhaps the county would be a better resource for people that are having those troubles rather than the school district. So our taxpayer money, instead of going to the school district to hire social workers, would go to the county so that they could hire social workers. I'm just saying, we might be chewing on more than what we can swallow here by attempting to resolve this way. I like what Neil said. We need to examine our process, examine what the issue is, and get to the heart of the issue. So let's say we do hire 2 or 3 or 5 social workers. Can we guarantee then that this year none of the kids will have any problems at home? No, of course not, right? Right. So what that does is it helps us. It gives us a way to scope the problem and do what we can and should do and are able to do. So my question to us is it the board's job is it the board's desire to create a policy that takes some of the school district staff into people's homes and helps to try to repair those problems so that the children are able to come to the school healthy and fed and with clean clothes, etc.?
Ms.
So that's the
Bungard,
heart
I
of
think
the
would be a
question.
good person to answer that question as far as what kind of services.
I missed that. Could you say that again?
Ms. Bungard should answer that question for you, John.
Thank you.
These positions would be positions that would be the liaison between the county. We do currently work with the county, and we do provide resources with the county, but these individuals have a wealth of knowledge in those resources that are available for our families. So when we have situations that our family may need resources outside of what the school can offer, then these individuals are those liaisons for the school district and the county to help get the family set up. So it is a resource that a school district benefits from, the students benefit from, and we want to make sure that we are offering supports in all areas for all of our students to make sure that when they come to school, that they can learn.
So when we boil that down, it becomes the administration's recommendation that we do hire some social workers, whether it be 1 or 1.5 or 2. There has to be some social workers that come from the school district. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, now the board gets to argue about, whether it's 1, 1.5, or 2.
Yes,
Right?
and I think one point that was not brought up is the social emotional well-being of some of our students who are in crisis during the time of the school day. And having that person being responsible for 7 buildings sometimes negates immediate response, where 2 people can then help in situations that,
There could be criminal activity, it could be drugs. There's a host of problems that we would love to see addressed. So we need to pick a set that we think we can tackle as a board. So I would be happy if the board would recommend that we have 2 social workers. I would be happy if it would be 1. But I don't want the balance to be such that if we hire 1, they're so overwhelmed they burn out. That's not good. Or if we hire 2, that they don't have enough to do. So the board can't know that, the administration can. So we're looking for a recommendation from you.
Absolutely. And,
Thank you.
You know, one of the things that you know, I think Mr. Williams touched on is the home and school visitor role in this process. And speaking with Patty Jovanovich, who does update all of us in central office weekly, there are a number of students within our district who are in affidavit status, multiple occupancy residencies that, you know, we need to ultimately check up on to see that, in fact, our tax dollars in Monroeville are being used accordingly and, you know, not fraudulently. And, you know, this is something that, you know, both individuals would be able to tackle more efficiently.
Thank you.
I give off you, Bill. I think that's a big thing too, because, you know, Gateway is such a great school district. There's a lot of people that want to try to come here for free, and they try to get their kids here. And one of the jobs that these social workers homeschool is make sure these people live where they live. And the ones that we don't catch, that's taxpayer money going down the drain. So that's another big thing. And I don't know how many a year, if anybody would know that data.
I can just add that even today I met with Patty Jovanovich, and there were, I believe, 15 individuals that have failed after 4 certified mailings to update and provide proof of residencies that were dropped from our rolls with the help of the home and school visitor.
And there's people who come in here at 9 a.m. with a lease of where they live, and at 12 p.m. a person will show up with the same lease. You know, it happens, but that's why I think it's a big thing that we have too, and we support the administration on this.
All right, so Neil, does that answer your question about can we provide a better process, a more cogent process for the board to follow?
I'm fine with the position. I concur with what they said. I'm okay with that. I just wish I knew about it months ago.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments under personnel agenda? Seeing none, we have a roll call vote, please.
What do we vote? What's the vote?
Personnel agenda.
Section
Accept
D.
the personnel agenda, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenbort.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. Nola.
Aye.
Motion
Very
carries.
much. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to go make some phone calls so we can get them here by Friday.
Section E, conference and conventions, we have none. Section F, administrative resolutions. Too short?
Can I have Dr. Rossi take item number 1? I will take item number 2.
We have educational service agreements to approve the following agreements: TCV Community Services, Wesley Spectrum, New Story Agreement, and the PA Educator Contract.
Item number 2, facility agreements. We have approved, looking for approval for the Tamburitzans to use the Gateway Middle School Auditorium on the 24th. Also, I would like to add, if we can do so, for everyone here on September 18th at 6:30 p.m., a human trafficking internet safety program that will be run by Robin Mungo from the PA State Police, and also Dr. Mark Rubino, president at Forbes Hospital, and that's on September 18th at the Gateway High School Robert A. Reed Auditorium.
I'd like to thank Chad for bringing that to our attention.
Yep, and we'll get the word out there. We are looking, we have 2 groups that are interested to provide free daycare or babysitting during the event, because Forbes stated that human trafficking talk is not intended for children. So we'll try to make sure we have free daycare there as well.
Item number 3, Dr. Rossi.
We have revised policy 203 for 30-day public display. Approve the 30-day public display of the revised policy 203, communicable diseases and immunizations.
And item number 4, direct Mr. Schott to take a few of these items.
Item number 4 is the annual exoneration of district real estate tax collectors. This being for the 16-17 fiscal year, specifically in municipality of Monroeville, Mr. Patrick Fulkerson, total amount of $1,025,039.07, and the borough of Pitcairn, Sally DeRobia, $148,276.21. Item number 5 is the approval of the Title I, Title II, Part A, and Title III federal funds preliminary Allocation amounts for 17-18 fiscal year as depicted below. Total title funds, $895,601. Item number 6 is approval of quarterly and annual design, editing, and printing services from Krakow Communications, Inc. during the 17-18 fiscal year. And please note that change was made from the study session. The expenditure amount not to exceed $25,000 during the 17-18 fiscal year, as depicted in Exhibit F. Next item is the district donation received from GE Power Conversion, Brian Newman, specifically of office furniture. Recipient was Kelly Ethorn. It will be utilized for staff at University Park and staff throughout the entire district. Again, the value is estimated several $1,000s. Next item is the approval of agreement with First Steps Driving Schools instructors to conduct the end-of-course skills test for district students enrolled in a driver's education program, as depicted in Exhibit G. Next item, number 9, is the annual Eastern Area Special Schools 17-18 budget. The Eastern Area Special School Joint Committee 17-18 budget and resolution number 2017-1 ballot and resolution number 2017-2 as depicted in Exhibit H.
Taking the last one.
I can do it.
Mr. Shaw.
Item number 10.
I was having a sidebar with Mr. Williams.
Okay, no problem. Item number 10 is the addendum for the final MOU for Digital Promise Technology and Learning Coaching Fellowship Program. Authorize the Gateway School District Administration to enter into a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, with Digital Promise. Final approved award amount for coaching fellows, $93,047, as depicted in Exhibit I.
And just for the board's information, Dr. Rossi has some updated information because this is very similar to what we had before, but slight adjustment.
Yep, it's really the same MOU. We were awarded around $81,000 at that point. We were able to get a few more dollars up to around $93,000, so we're up over $11,000 in additional funds, and that's what that MOU reflects.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Stubenfort, second by Mr. Nola. Questions, comments on section F? Mr. Stubenfort.
You want to go first, Phil?
Yeah, I just again want to thank Mrs. Ethorn for her getting the donation from Brian Newman Corporation, GE Power Conversion. The furniture is really nice. I've seen it throughout the district. It fits in perfectly, and I again thank you to GE Power.
If I could just also add, I did reach out to Brian Newman, a Gateway graduate, and offered our thanks from his school district. And, he was just very thankful for the education he received during his time here at Gateway and was very happy to give back and will continue to give back and really offer his services. He's involved with GE, as you've seen through the motion here, and really wants to get involved in the STEM program here at Gateway. So we're continuing to have that dialogue, and we're very grateful for our graduates and what they've done for our district.
Very good. And I think everyone on the board agrees with that. That's good stuff there. I had a few questions, and it's probably not even on most people's minds here, but the PR. I agree we need PR. I agree that there are certain things that are lacking within the district. I just don't know if the mailer is the best option. I think everyone that lives within the Gateway School District understands how great of a district it is. If you talk to parents, you talk to students, talk to alumni, like you just mentioned with Newman, yourself, myself, I mean, alumni are very, very proud of the district. Those who live within the community are very, very proud of the district. I don't know if that should necessarily be our focus, and I just, probably not a popular opinion, but that's fine. But I think we should look at spending that money more wisely. For instance, I travel a lot with work, and I took pictures on here. It's not going to do any justice to show them on here, but if you go up to the Cleveland Clinic, right, they have a pedestrian crosswalk similar to the one up at the sports complex, and it has a picture across the entire thing that says, U.S. World and News Report, the exact same thing we got, except they're #1 in cardiology and #1 in Ohio for orthopedic surgery and whatever their specialties might be. I think money would be better spent doing something like that, because not only is it affecting members of the Gateway School District. But when people come to a basketball game, football game, they're seeing that. They're seeing right in their face, very, very large and proud. Here is a school district that is excelling in, top 10 in the county. We could put on there for school performance profile, top quartile in the state. U.S. World News Report silver medal, bronze medal, elementary schools that get all these awards. I just think money would be better spent doing that than a mailer.
I can let you know that is Mr. Brown still there? Looks like Chad was reading our minds because we've been working with a company that has finished, if you want to call it, production templates on those seals and Gateway School District High School across the bridge at the sports complex.
Very good.
So that would be going up there very soon.
Those are things that I would like to see. The mailer, again, I'm just not, just my personal preference, I'm not completely sold, just because I think if you ask a lot of the parents here, they know we have a darn good district. They know, educationally we offer a great product. I think we need to brag more outside of our own community for other people to understand. You go into other municipalities like Upper St. Clair, they have the big billboard of their accomplishments as you're going in. Cranberry, same thing on their little, well, it's not little, it's like a huge monument as you get off the turnpike there. So those are just things that I'm glad we are now pursuing.
Mr. Studenbort, you're reading my mind because I've also reached out to the municipality to get their bylaws on signage as far as what is allowable as we're coming off the Parkway onto 22 and 48 to a welcome to Monroeville, home of the Gateway School District sign with our accolades
Top
on
10
it.
in
Yes.
county. Okay, very good, thank you.
Chad, can I just add to it, since it says quarterly, I think we could all, as a board, agree to reevaluate the publication after the first quarter, and if we want to change direction with Craycoff, we probably could.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we did something similar to this, 2 years ago, probably for the 3 years preceding that, the state of the district, which I thought was a good document because it's just edible, right? You have a 15-page document that you can see. Here's the accomplishments. Here's what is going good. I think I forget which one of our newspaper friends back there did like a quick little snippet that showed all the teachers that were furloughed, and there's mass hysteria every time there's a teacher furloughed. All of the teachers were brought back, and we actually hired 3 additional teachers. Like those are good things to put out there for the public to see. I just don't know if quarterly is the best, and that, again, that's just my.
Yes, previously the district did partner with Monroeville. I believe it was in Monroeville magazine. Is that still out there?
Yeah, it's still around.
We did purchase a number of pages, but we found that to be ineffective. So this was something that would just merely gauge really the efforts based on the awards of the kids and recognition. It is in no way, shape, or form meant to combat the negative press that's always been floating out there. So it's something that we want to do to just highlight the accomplishments of students.
That's fair. I just hope that, as with everything we do, we just continuously evaluate it, look at its effectiveness.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Any other questions or comments on section F? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Ritter?
Aye.
Mr. Stubenbort?
Aye.
Mrs. Warning?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mrs. Cerrucci?
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich?
Aye.
Mr. Nola?
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Motion carries. Resolutions presented by board members. Okay.
There was I don't want to say revision, but an addition to the policy that I had asked to put on for 30-day public display. Everything would stay the same as far as the shelf life for frozen meats and the cheeses and dry goods. But I did add to the implementation of the shelf life standards set forth above shall commence with any food purchases that takes place after the effective passage of this within policy and shall thereafter comply with the policy. All food products already delivered and received by Gateway School District shall not be affected by this within the policy. Rather, such food will be governed by the policy in effect prior to the passage of this policy. Which, in other words, none of the food that we have right now in-house would be thrown away. It would be used first, except if it would go past the 3-year, which we have a 3-year policy in effect right now. So everything would be used, so we wouldn't be losing hundreds of thousands of dollars that, is out there. But this would make sure that there would be no food wasted.
I second for purpose of discussion.
There was a motion.
Motion by Ms. Warning, second by Ms. Newport. Questions, comments?
This then restarts the 30-day?
No, this
No.
is just you're not changing the substance of the ordinance, you're changing the effective date. Remember, you asked me that. You're changing the effective date of its start time. So I don't think it necessarily starts another 30 days. The substance of the ordinance, or resolution rather, stays the same.
I have a question. If it's true that keeping certain foods beyond 6 months or beyond 1 year always causes our students to become sick, then why wouldn't we begin to get rid of all the food that's older than 6 months or older than 1 year right now? Why would you call out a certain section of the food that's unhealthy and keep it and give that unhealthy food to the students, but the new food that comes in that could be unhealthy, intend to throw that out? Doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Reason why this is being set like this, Mr. Ritter, is from all talking with Mr. Lorenzo. I had him do an inventory to see what was there. I didn't get the exact products were there. I just got like a dollar amount. There's not a lot of food left to be used from what I'm understanding.
So it's just a little bit of food that we would give to the students that would cause them to be sick, right?
They're not going to be sick.
So if they're not going to be sick under the protocol that we're under, then I don't
Well, Mr.
understand
Ritter,
why
what
we would
I'm
change the
looking
protocol.
is I want our students to have fresh food.
That's not legitimate, because all the other school board members also want our school children to have good food. So that's not a valid argument.
Well, this is my concern. This is what,
So the inventory is 77,000, correct? That wouldn't be like a little amount. Is that accurate?
But first, do you agree that all the other school board members want the students to have good and healthy, high quality
I
and
would
safe
hope
food?
so.
So the answer is no, but you hope so. Right.
I cannot answer for other board members, Mr.
Okay, so
Ritter.
I ask you not to answer for the board members. I ask you, what do you believe about the school board members? Because you said you want the students to be receiving high quality and safe food. Doesn't that imply that there could be some other school board members who don't want the students to receive high quality, safe food?
Mr. Ritter, I can't answer for other board
Okay,
members.
Then I will. I will say that all the school board members want our students to receive high quality and safe food. In order to carry that out, we've elected to create certain policies that rely on the experts who have created protocols and standards by which our food service people can purchase and use food. Those standards and the school service personnel have followed those standards in such an exemplary way that no students have ever gotten sick. But we want to change that. Instead of having no students become sick, we want to change that, right? Isn't that what you want to do?
Continue.
Okay, I'm continuing by asking you to respond to the question. Wouldn't changing a policy that works and works well be an incorrect path for the school board to follow?
We never had a policy with a effective date. We put a 3-year policy into effect.
The policy was, it pointed to the standards that are laid out by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the federal department, the FDA, researchers from the National Centers of Health Statistics, the CDC, all the food service organizations, the personnel who are experts, the people who certify, the county organizations who certify people to come in and perform the inspections. But this board is now about to throw out all of those protocols that have worked, and I'm wondering why we would do that.
It's on display for 30 days.
I'm not
Okay.
asking whether it's on display for 30 days. I understand it's on display for 30 days. My question is, why throw out a policy that has worked and worked well and will cost money? Because if it's true that we should throw it out, then let's do it. If we do it and it turns out that we were wrong, then shouldn't the board be held accountable? That is, shouldn't the board also pass a resolution to hold ourselves financially accountable for any money that's lost if it turns out that we do something incorrect?
I have a few different questions, and if you don't mind, John,
Just let that hang in the air. No one has ever proposed that right before. I hate the idea of proposing that. That is, that the board hold itself accountable for some of the decisions that it creates that causes turmoil for the food service department. So that's what's at stake here, and that's why I'm arguing so passionately, because I talk to professionals too. Talked to one today in a lab coat. I laid out the proposition that we're proposing right here. The person said, essentially, that's ridiculous. They take pride in their work. The food service personnel take pride in their work. They know what to do, and they've been doing it well. It makes no sense to stop following a policy that works.
Do we have any data? I know last meeting we had requested data. Do we have any data that?
I requested the data, and Mrs. Warning said she would provide it. Would you
any-
like it?
Data from Mr. Lorenzo?
No, the data stating that 1 year is the best option.
1 minute here.
And that 3 years is hurtful to the students.
Well, I don't know if there is exact data out there, but school board members wish to provide fresher food, then that's up to the school board. And speaking with Mr. Lorenzo, I said, why do we have stuff that's 3 years old? And, you know, the system failed. Things didn't get rotated. It admitted that, you know, it comes in, they marked it. You speak to some of the public, a lot of kids don't even eat here because of the food that we serve, and we don't have a choice on some of the things that we serve, and I understand, I've seen some of the food. And I think what Belle's trying to do is trying to get the freshest food she can, and maybe the food service department, I think, understands that, and it'll be an incentive to make sure things get rotated up there. And I think it's a win-win the whole way around.
I agree. My question is, I mean, because I completely agree. And if you ask any board member, if you ask anyone in the public, right, if you just put it as a simple yes or no, or which one would you prefer?
Right.
Would you prefer a 3-year limit or a 1 year limit? Every single person's going to pick 1 year. If you then ask the exact same people, would you prefer 1 year or 1 week? Everyone's going to pick 1 week.
Right.
And if you ask, you know, do you want farm to table? Everyone's going to pick farm to table. As to whether or not the students like the meal, I can guarantee you every student at that high school would prefer a McDonald's meal over a salad, whether it be from the high school cafeteria, whether it be from Panera. The taste, the things like that, when you're used to eating unhealthy food, which obviously a lot of us do, right? You would obviously prefer that McDonald's meal that you get prior to football practice than any meal served. You know, like the fries are being baked because that's healthier for the students. They're not offered pop, where you go to, you know, McDonald's, you have a 5-year-old getting, you know, medium that's this big of Coca-Cola. Of course they prefer McDonald's. So I think from the standpoint of, are we giving healthy food, we need to look at statistics. We need to look at, okay, is storing that food harmful? Is there deterioration of nutritional value? You know, I've done way too much research on this. It's actually mind-boggling that we even had to look at the difference between a freeze, a flash freeze, a deep freeze, so many darn freezes. And, you know, you look at the water crystals on a deep freeze are so small that it doesn't tear up the meat, it doesn't change the taste, it doesn't change the nutritional value, whereas when you slowly freeze something, buy it from, you know, Giant Eagle. Someone said, oh, well, why don't we buy stuff from Giant Eagle? When you buy stuff from Giant Eagle, you're buying it, you're taking it from the freezer, you're bringing it over here, it's going to start to thaw a little bit, and then it's going to freeze again. That's actually worse for people. You might think it's fresh because you just got it from Giant Eagle and it was only on the shelf for a week. That's actually worse than a deep frozen meal from the get-go. So we have no data. Do we have an answer as to what would happen if we lose money, like Martin, Mr. Shaw, and Mr. Short had said would most likely occur?
When I looked at the budget, they're using between 700 to 800,000 in their budget. He's saying it's 15 to 20% commodities is what we're looking at, which comes down to what I think, believe what, 0.000, which is roughly.
It's so small.
I can't. I'm not the math.
Hold on. You just said it's 15 to 20%, correct?
15 to 20% of $700,000, which is his food budget. The commodities purchase is 15 to 20%.
Okay.
So if you use the high number, it's about $140,000 a year.
But I was just asking a question, so we don't have any answer to that. No, Mr. O'Donnell, I'd like to finish. I've never interrupted you this evening. Val, are we looking to outsource food, or is that the plan? Okay.
I don't know. I would like to want to know where that came from.
I'd love to share with the public. So I have an email here. March 14th, 2017. Chelsea Dice writes, Val and Bill, attached, please find a memo I prepared regarding outsourcing the food service department as per Val's request. Please call me with any questions or comments. Thanks. Chelsea. You responded, thanks, Chelsea. Lots of reading to do. Appreciate it.
Okay. That, when you say outsource, Chad, are you referring that we're looking to get rid of all the employees? Outsourcing is not getting rid of the employees. They would come in and direct. Am I
Outsourcing is not getting rid of employees?
correct?
It is not, actually. I can.
Go ahead.
Actually, I've done a lot of research because Val brought this forward, and one of the things I did was I called 2 outsourcing companies because I wanted to know if we set this policy and we went down that road, could somebody like that adhere to our policy? And they said absolutely they could. And I said, well, we can't outsource, because a lot of them, I was just trying to get information, quite honestly, and they wanted to meet me, and I'm like, we're not interested in outsourcing right now. We have contracted employees, and I'm being completely honest and transparent with you. And they said, well, you know, we have programs where we can manage your program and we can retain all of your employees. So I'm sorry that I didn't expect that answer from them, but absolutely, outsourcing does not mean that you're replacing your staff. A lot of times they take over the same contract,
Absolutely.
they take over your employees,
Yep.
same pay scale, same contract.
Completely agree. And-
So let's get that fear tactic. Nobody here is looking to get rid of our employees. We're all going to look at, and I'm even open to looking at all options to give our kids the best quality food that we can and keep our budget in line so that everybody's happy. The budget, the kids, and the families.
Completely agree with you, but I also ask that you reach out to other individuals. So if you talk to any member of the Plum School Board, which I've talked to, and they had outsourced their custodial services. They first came in and said, we'll keep all the employees, we'll keep the contract, we'll keep the same pay, benefits, everything. That was great. 2 years later, the contract expired. Guess what happened? Pay was cut significantly. None of those individuals who lived within that community stayed on board, and it was actually outsourced. So yes, is a company going to come in, and a company as large as an Airmark or whoever it may be, can they undercut and say, oh, we can do it for this cost and we can pay those people that? That's great. But go down to University of Pittsburgh, go down to Duquesne University, go down to any of these places where Airmark is employed and see what they're paying their employees. They're not paying them what we are paying our employees here at Gateway. So yes, it might be good for another year, which is left on their contract, that they can give them, you know, the $15, $16 an hour, which these are individuals that live within the community. But what happens when they say, you know what, we just couldn't make it, you know, profits were down, we're going to have to, you know, the new contract says we can pay you $12 an hour. Do you want to stay, yes or no? Those are the things we need to look at. So when I hear comments like, hey, we haven't looked at outsourcing, but yet we very clearly did look at outsourcing, and we actually paid taxpayer dollars to look into the legality of outsourcing. And in the memo, right, it talks about we have a collective bargaining agreement in place, and we can't just get rid of them, right? Had we reached impasse at negotiations, you would have been able to possibly outsource, and then they would have the opportunity of matching that. But, you know, to say that we weren't looking at outsourcing, I mean, it's blatantly a lie. So it's not a fear tactic. You know, the fear that I have is when does it stop? Right? If we do 1 year and we don't have any data, and our business manager says that's a poor business decision, our food director who's in charge of the food program says that's a poor decision, our superintendent says this is not recommended by administration, when does it stop, right? Because wouldn't you prefer 6 months over 1 year? Wouldn't that be better for the kids? We should maybe make an addendum to this and make it 6 months. Like it actually says, you know, the wording was changed on this one, but it actually said non-perishable items we're throwing out after a year. Non-perishable items. I hope we're reaching out to local food banks because it's non-perishable. We're now making non-perishable items perishable. I don't care who you talk to or what you say, there's no data to back that up. And to throw canned goods that can, you know, be in storage for 5 years and are in, you know, bunker storage and pastas and things like that, you know, and if you understand purchasing, right, when you buy in bulk, you receive a reduced cost. That's pretty generalization, but pretty accurate, correct, Mr. Schott? Yeah. So we're able to buy these products at a lower price point, which benefits all of our employees because they're able to get paid, they're able to stay on staff, right? We had to actually eliminate one position last year because we were not making the profits, and a lot of that had to do with healthier food options, not selling Diet Pop, not selling the large cookies, etc. But now we're putting another government mandate on them with no backing, no statistical data that says anything is happening. And all this is about is commodities. I would be fine with this if we take out non-perishable items and we take out commodities purchases, because that's really what this is about.
Can I comment? Chair, are you done, Chair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It was my understanding that the reason this is being presented, this motion is being presented, is because several board members felt strongly that throwing out the food that was currently in our possession wouldn't be the best thing to do financially. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, Val, but this addendum was drafted to assuage those concerns. So we'll use up the commodities that we have now, and when they're exhausted, then they'll follow the policy of the board. Isn't that basically all this is about?
That's basically all it is.
Okay, that's just all that this was drawn for, all right?
And I disagree with it
Okay.
and all of it, because the U.S. Department of Agriculture has created protocols for all types of foods, and we should follow their recommendation, not our board resolution with the addendum here.
Okay.
That's my contention.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
So let me ask George. You were on the phone last time we talked about this, and we were having trouble hearing you. Do you remember that?
Okay. About, what are we talking about here, the food?
Yeah, about the food. And we were wondering what your objection to this was, and you weighed in. You mentioned that you had walked through the meat lockers and you saw some cheese and meats that didn't look right, and you didn't want to serve any bad foods to the students. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And were those, have any foods that were unsafe ever been served to our students here, to your knowledge?
Not in my knowledge.
Right, not to mine either. And foods do go bad. Of course they get mold, they get old, they smell funny, and the food service people never serve them to the students. I like that, so why would we change that? Why do you want to change that?
The only thing that disturbed me with my walkthrough was the food that was 4 or 5 years old, and then we had present food there too. I was wondering why we weren't using the old food before the new food.
I like your thinking there, because it should have been rotated and it wasn't, and somebody slipped up and it was caught and dealt with, right? That's good. But why change the policy? The policy was violated, and then it was, the food was discarded. The policy wasn't wrong, the operation was wrong, right?
Yeah, the operation with all the
Right, and so when
blue
somebody...
cheese and everything, yeah.
Right, when somebody messes up, you need to get that. It's a black mark against you. And that's okay. People make mistakes, don't they? Everybody, every teacher, every person, every board member, we make mistakes. We shouldn't change the underlying protocol because of that. We should deal with it and move on, right?
Yeah.
I just want to read something that I had received. The inventory reporting requirements from the USFDA, it's consistent with inventories not to exceed a 6-month supply of any USDA foods without approval. State agencies administering are required to use, there's certain forms that they have, inventory management, register, to report any food items in state and state contracted warehouses that exceed 6 months of inventory. They're talking about foods that are donated, which commodities, I don't want to say are donated, but we get them at a very low cost, which should not exceed 6 months of the inventory. I could print this out. I had it. I don't know where I left it, but I can print that out and give it to you.
Any other questions or comments?
The USFDA. United States Department.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
We are not voting.
This isn't a vote. This is just a resolution.
Yeah, it was a motion and second.
Has it been on display for 30 days since 2 weeks ago?
No, it's to change.
Oh, I see.
The 30-day. Yeah.
I see, okay, thank you.
To add
It's
number
the
4.
add.
Yeah, to change the 30-day display.
Right, the language of, to add number 4.
Correct.
Yeah, that's all this is to change the language.
And I guess, actually, before we go to roll call, I just want to explain my vote, because I know during roll call it's not the time. I'm actually going to vote for this, because I believe this is actually less asinine than the first one, because we're now at least keeping the food that is healthy still and serving it. So I'm not for the 1-year policy, just wanted to explain that.
I'm caught in. Okay, cool.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Stubenbort.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. Enola.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I have another resolution, if that's okay.
Excuse me, before we go on, you can see that we've invested a lot of time in this discussion. I'm discussed out of this. It's on 30-day notice. If the public could weigh in, please, that would help the board, because we know what we think. We've said it out loud a couple times. We've discussed it the way we should, out in the open, a good, hearty discussion. But we need the public to weigh in. This is a 30-day public display, so let's have the public weigh in. So what you do is you get your email, you get your telephone, you call us up, you let us know what you think. That will help us, okay? Thanks.
Okay, no, I have another resolution because I don't want you guys coming back to me. Resolution of the Gateway School District establishing a policy concerning the introduction of board petitions and resolutions by individual board members. Whereas individual Gateway School Board directors from time to time present proposed resolutions and petitions to be considered by the board at its study session or regular meeting, and whereas there is a desire of the Gateway School Board to provide notice and an opportunity to study the proposed resolution or petition in advance by the individual directors, now therefore be it resolved and enacted this, we'll leave the day open.
15th day of August.
No resolution or petition presented by an individual board member can be considered at a study session or a regular meeting unless the entire board has received at least 7 days' notice of such a future presentation, and each board member is provided an actual copy of the petition or resolution to be considered by the board at the next meeting. This is
Is it over?
I
There's a
just
little bit more.
have, there's a little bit more. Section 2, the policy may be excused only when 2/3 of the majority of the school board shall vote to consider such a resolution or petition at a study session or regular meeting without such prior notice. Section 3, all resolutions or parts of the resolution which are inconsistent herewith
Can you
are
slow down
hereby
on section 3 and please reread?
all.
It's not on my page.
This is a new one.
She's just making this up.
No, I'm not making up, I'm reading.
All right. Making it up.
Section 3, all resolutions or parts of resolutions which are inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. Section 4, if any section, clause, provision, or portion of this resolution shall be held invalid or unconstitutional by any court or competent jurisdiction, such decisions shall not affect any other section, clause, provision, or portion of a resolution so long as it remains legally enforceable minus the invalid portion.
I make the motion to approve my motion that was actually changed to 7 days as opposed to 4.
Motion to approve?
Oh, second, I was
Wait.
actually just coughing. I'll second, sure.
Wait a second.
You didn't cough.
I had the floor with my cross.
Oh, she didn't make a
Motion,
You 2 seconds.
well, wouldn't it be heard, you second?
Well, she didn't say I make a motion, so I so moved it. I made the motion.
And I
I'm-
seconded it.
Okay.
She's actually making the
I'm
motion.
Motion
making the
approved by
motion.
Mr. Stubenport,
Okay, there you
second
go.
by Mr. O'Donnell. Question, comments on the motion?
I have a few. Thank you. Hopefully you vote accordingly. Thank you for changing it to 7 days instead of 4 days. And hopefully this Groundhog's Day shenanigans continues for the next one that we discuss, which is the equity coordinator. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to find it in the
Yeah.
packet
It
that
is
was
not.
handed.
there?
She just brought this from the floor.
It's more or less Chad's resolution, except instead
Changing
of,
from 4
Except for it
days
was
to
7 days.
Yeah, the reason it was
And there
voted down
was like
3 times
3 more-
prior,
2
they
more
wanted 3 more
sections.
days.
transparency resolution.
Has the public been given a paper copy of this either? I haven't.
They've had everything except, no, they've had everything except the day change.
Correct.
They had the whole policy.
It's Chad's transparency resolution, John. She
Except for
just
7
added the
days.
days from 4 to 7.
It's been
I'm
going
not sure
on.
about these
We've been
last 2
voting
things.
on this for 3 months.
I think I got that.
Correct.
They just, can you tell me how the last 2 things
We're
went
added.
on there?
What last 2 things?
Because we only have section 2.
I don't have a problem with that. Those are,
Forced to,
that's,
forced to mature, is that how it's
Are
pronounced?
those like, it's just legal things, like
yes.
standard legal
Section 3 and
things that
Section
you
4
put
is
in?
the typical verbiage found
It's
under
the same
most
as
motions.
Chad's.
Correct.
Okay.
Only I changed it from 4
That's the
Because
only
I
change.
Yeah, that's exactly.
4 days was completely inadequate, and it gave people an opportunity to hide things, so now she's making it 7 days.
So we increased transparency.
Okay,
and
can we
lowered
have a roll call vote,
food.
please?
Okay.
This is, okay. Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. Nola.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenborg.
Can't make this stuff up, aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Any other board resolutions?
Whereas the Gateway School District's administration has advertised and interviewed numerous candidates for full-time equity position, and whereas no qualified full-time candidates have been identified to date, and whereas the Gateway Board of School Directors desires to no longer delay initiating this important program, now therefore be it resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors directs the administration to implement the following. 1, create a district-wide policy to be approved by the Gateway Board of School Directors to establish equity goals. 2, to create a Gateway Equity Team. The Gateway Equity Team will consist of the following: diversity consultant, culturally responsive pedagogy consultant, secondary principal, elementary principal, assistant superintendent, secondary teacher, elementary teacher, and 1 parent. 3, Cleveland Stewart Elementary and Evergreen Elementary Schools will serve as private schools to begin during the 17-18 school year. 4, implement the Charlotte Danielson's framework for teaching throughout the district and crosswalk the content with culturally responsive pedagogy. 5, deliver professional development that establishes a clear connection between Charlotte Danielson's framework for teaching and culturally responsive pedagogy. 6, provide diversity training to all staff members within the Cleveland, Stewart, and Evergreen Elementary Schools. Additional diversity training will be delivered to all teachers within the Gateway School District as part of the 3-year comprehensive plan. And 7, deepen the emphasis on parental and community involvement to ultimately have a positive impact on the student engagement and achievement. And then there is a breakdown of expenses. My motion.
I second for purpose of an amendment.
Motion by Mr. O'Donnell, second by Mr. Stubenport. Questions,
can I
comments?
ask-
I make a
Can I-
motion that
can-
we amend it where it says Achievement Gap Committee recommendation to Steve O'Donnell's recommendation. That is my motion. And the reasoning behind it is I have 2 documents here. One is the Gateway Achievement Gap Committee agenda for January 31st, 2017. On page 14 of 17, it shows the Achievement Gap Committee recommendation. Number 1 says $125,000 equity director, full-year salary. Exhibit number 2, or letter B, whatever we want to call it, is the Achievement Gap Committee mission, which is a very large binder. On page 13 of 16, again, it states the Achievement Gap Committee recommendation number 1, $125,000 equity director, full-year salary. That is my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Question, comments? Roll call.
This is to amend, correct?
Yes, just to change the name.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Mrs. Cerucci.
No.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. Nola.
What are we changing the name to?
Steve O'Donnell's recommendation.
I don't like that either.
You can abstain if you want to.
All right, I will abstain.
Mr. O'Donnell.
No.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenborg.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
No.
Motion carries. And we don't have,
No, it
we don't
didn't.
have 5. I'm sorry, motion
Fails.
fails. I'm sorry, fails.
What was it, 4?
4, 3, and 1 abstain.
Okay, now that the original motion is on the floor.
Question, comments on the original?
Yes.
May I?
You
I
may.
was part of the committee.
Yeah, but that shouldn't matter. But go
Well, I
ahead.
was there. I was there.
You're right, go ahead.
The recommendations from this committee have changed multiple times. I remember your recommendation, seeing full-time equity in your spreadsheet for $124,000. I remember that. Okay? I also, in poor Steve's defense, have this email that I sent myself August 24th, and it was the close of the GAP committee. And I said, Last night at the end of the meeting, I summarized what I was hearing from the committee as their top recommendations for raising the achievement gap. And Ms. Neithamer asked me to email that out to everyone. What I heard was the following 6 solutions. 1, the group would like to see diversity training offered to the staff. 2, equity goals/policy should be created for the district. 3, an equity team or person, consultant, hired or delegated depending upon qualifications. 4, pilot school program for one school to test recommendations. 5, culturally responsive teaching, the overwhelming method supported to raise the achievement gap. And 6, some type of program created to reach out to homes of the underperforming students. That was the initial committee recommendations. And this is a committee this is not time for public comment, I'm sorry. It's my turn to comment right now, and I'm commenting on this, okay? I lost my train of thought.
What's the date?
What was
Okay.
the date of that?
August 24th.
This was August 24th, 2016.
Okay, and you
Oh,
said
wait,
that-
my point was that this committee has continually evolved and changed recommendations, and recommendations continue to change. And in regards to the budget estimate here, this is just cost estimates for budgeting purposes. This isn't us directing any type of equity coordinator on how to run the program, because there is no way that I can speak and tell somebody how to run an equity program in the school. I want to hire the correct person and have them really create the program and off of our guidance, off of the committee's direction. It was our job as a committee to kind of set direction and give input, but the person in the team that's going to carry it out are the ones that are going to have the ultimate decision-making authority. And this program can change, and the position can change. You know, we started off with a part-time position, then we went to a full-time position, and now we're back to a part-time position, and everybody's upset because they say there's no transparency, okay? Let me finish. So the problem is that we passed a motion to search for a full-time director. We did that, and as a board member, I trust the information that my administration gives to me, okay? The assistant superintendents, the HR people came back to us and said, no full-time person is qualified for this job. 2 weeks ago, I felt many people in the audience say, we really want to have somebody in place before school starts. I heard that loud and clear. So Mr. Short came back to us, and there's questions and accusations that some people know there's some type of deceit against our employees and our administration, that we're not telling you that there's qualified candidates out there. I take offense to that. I will defend my employees, and if there's something that they've done that's wrong, it will certainly come out, but I trust that there won't. So the story is that the Department of Education said that you must have somebody with a principal certification in this position. That's the bottom line. That's what the Department of Education has told my administrators, and that is who I'm going to listen to. Now, yes, if you cannot find that position, we talked about this in executive session. If you cannot find that position, if there's nobody qualified, you may be able to, no, based on their approval, okay? Yeah, you guys keep interrupting me. You complain to me about interrupting. You're constantly interrupting me tonight. So you keep throwing me off my train of thought. So, I know what I was going to say. So, you know, if you think back to when we were searching for an assistant superintendent and a curriculum director, we had a plan. We had just promoted Bill Short to superintendent, and the next goal was we need to hire a superintendent, assistant superintendent, and curriculum director, right? Did that plan change? Yes, it did. Do you know why it changed? Because we had 2 phenomenal assistant superintendent candidates. They both had experience in curriculum, and one had experience in the elementary level, and one had a position at a senior high level. So what did our administrators, who we pay to run this school, come to us and say, I think we should change the plan because we have 2 really good candidates, and I think we can make it work with these 2 candidates. I don't want to let them get out. I don't want to let them get away. And that's what we did. And these 2 gentlemen have been phenomenal this last year. So just because something changes, don't assume that we're trying to do something underhanded. We're not. We are committed to this program. We're looking to hire an individual. We have found a very good candidate with a principal certification who is willing to do the job part-time. That's the bottom line.
I have two comments.
Can I have the floor? Okay, I'm going to respectfully request my colleagues to just allow this to go to vote. I understand, and everybody in the audience understands, that some members of the board would like to move to a full-time position. Other members of the board might want to support the motion that's on the floor right now. But we have spent an enormous amount of time discussing this. I think all of the relevant points of view have been put on the table. I understand and respect other points of view. I hope you understand and respect mine, and I would just ask the chair to move it to a vote.
With one last comment. Just because we start out with a part-time or consultant position does not mean this is not going to grow. We are in the beginning stages of something we've never done, and none of the schools in the east suburbs have done this. Okay? So please look at this as a step in the right direction. This district is doing more than anybody that I know in the entire east suburbs is doing to try to show commitment to this issue and raising the achievement gap and having an equity committee or a person or a consultant, and the program's going to grow and develop. And everybody has their ideal candidate, and I'm sorry if your right candidate wasn't the one that was chosen or wasn't my candidate, but I'm going by the recommendations of our administration. If they bring forward a good person, I think it's time to move forward.
And
can I ask the chair if we can vote?
For sake of transparency, since we had two dissenting votes,
You cannot interrupt.
Can I ask the chair?
Unless a point of order is made.
Because a question was addressed by a board member to Mr. Williams.
And I'm pleading that we present our side.
I hear everybody, and I understand this is a sensitive issue. And from the get-go, there were people on this board that didn't want to even support the GAP committee. They said it all starts at home. And there were people, when Steve asked for money, they said that's not going to happen, And we've come this far, and I think that it's time just to vote on it, whether it gets voted through or voted down. We move on from here. This is a start. I'm glad we're starting something, but I think this has been hashed out enough, and we could be here all night. And I do let people speak on and let them go over their times all the time. And the amount of time that we've just spent on stuff, I think it's time that I put my foot down and move on so we can start our school year off with the people we need in place and trust our administration. That's why we pay them, and we pay them well. And, they're here every day, in and out. We're here when we have a chance to be here. So I would suggest that we move on to a vote.
I very respectfully make a motion that we further discussion.
And I'll second.
Motion,
You just proceed to a vote.
roll call vote.
Oh,
So what, the motion is to proceed with discussion.
okay.
Don't worry about it, that's how
That's
parliamentary
the rule.
procedure works.
Yeah.
You're voting on Chad's motion to continue
discuss more.
discussion. You understand that?
It's called Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay?
Well, no, he's right.
Call the roll.
Okay. Mrs. Cerrucci.
No.
Mr. Lapsevich.
This is to continue discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Nola.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
No.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenbort.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
No.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Motion tied. It's tied, fails.
4-4.
Fails.
Okay.
So now you proceed to the vote on the original.
Well, only if he calls it.
There's a
Oh,
vote.
He's,
that's
he,
what he
I already
did.
called a roll call.
so you're telling me you let two people speak, but you're not gonna let other board members speak? Thank you
Exactly.
very
Roll
much.
call vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Lapsevich.
What are we voting on here now?
Steve O'Donnell's motion.
We're voting to hire the
Exactly the way this is.
part-time or
Right.
consultant
Not-
instead
not
of
committee's
full-time.
recommendation.
Not the committee's recommendation. That's right there.
Yes.
Mr. Nola.
No.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
I, with exception to the instructional coaching / tutoring at $75,000.
Okay. Mr. Stubenbort.
No.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci? Motion carries.
Motion carries. Any other motions brought forward by school board members?
I make a motion to hire a full-time equity director that services all buildings, not just two.
Second.
But didn't we,
Yes, we
Motion
voted
and a
yours down 3
second.
times as well.
Questions or comments?
didn't we just, didn't you?
Yes, we approved.
Just vote on it, just vote, I'm sorry.
We have a roll call vote, please.
This is for Chad's motion for the full-time equity.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Nola?
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell?
No.
Mr. Ritter?
No.
Mr. Stubenbort?
Aye.
Mrs. Warning?
No.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Oh, my goodness.
Mrs. Cerucci?
I don't know what.
Mrs. Cerucci?
No.
Mr. Lapsevich?
Do you understand the motion?
Is this,
Voted against himself, didn't understand the
This is for Chad's full-time position.
is this for all the
No.
buildings?
Yes, instead of just 2.
Except, okay,
I'm sorry,
yes.
what was Mr. Williams? I was a little.
He was an
confused.
aye.
Mr. Williams voted wrong.
Well, you're allowed to amend your vote.
Yeah.
Isn't that
It
true?
fails either way.
It's gonna fail either way, but
Yeah.
just so you know, because you're in the midst of voting, you can still amend it. You can change it. Once the voting is over, there's no amendments.
Well, no, we've done that
We,
before
we,
too.
we have done that.
Okay, well.
George's
no, I'm
vote,
the-
George's vote was,
Some, either you or somebody, member of your,
I'm the boss.
The phone system.
I got the big name.
well, the bottom line is either you did it or one of your people that represent you did
Neil,
it.
that's not
Bonnie.
on the table.
Bonnie,
It's the
amend
vote.
mine.
That's another issue.
okay.
You're right.
Okay, Scott's a no. And Mr. Lapsevich, was yours a yes or a no? I didn't.
Yes.
Yes.
I make a motion that we hire a second part-time equity director.
Second part-time.
Is there a second?
Don't do this.
Don't drag it on.
Yeah, we shouldn't be able to talk about how we feel.
Well, yeah, we've already been silenced once. I'll second that.
Roll call?
Now, there's questions first, right? Can we get questions?
You want to?
Okay. I'd like to ask why you're bringing these motions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So
Thank you.
I would have explained some of these had I had the opportunity to have done so. First of all, there were a few discrepancies in Mary Beth's presentation. So she had stated very accurately that recommendations change all the time, and then she stated the recommendation from August 2016, when I stated one from January 31st, 2017, which included the full-time equity director. We then went on to compare it to the assistant superintendents, where we went to hire 2 full-time positions, both a curriculum director and an assistant superintendent. We ended up hiring 2 full-time individuals. Now we're taking a recommendation for a full-time person and cutting it down to a part-time. This is a full-time problem. This is not a part-time problem. And to fix it by putting, someone in here for a few hours, first of all, does not follow the recommendations of the committee. And second of all, does not, I believe, at least, does not adequately move forward the way we need to. One other thing. So when I made the motion and when we had 7 board members vote to search for a full-time equity director, right? The motion entailed all buildings, not just 2. This isn't, a service that we look at for just 2 schools. This isn't a service that we even look at just for a part-time. I'm sorry to say it, but we're half-assing it. And if we do half-ass it, we don't know what the true outcome is, right? So if we look at it next year and we say, oh, well, it didn't work, I guess we're going to get rid of the equity director. We never actually truly went by the data, went by the recommendations of the committee, and gave it even a fighting chance. So whether you're for it or against it, and I think I do have a different view than most, right? I never said this is the golden bullet. I never said that this is the magic pill. But there's data that supports it may work. And, we don't have data that supports, that a full-time social worker and a part-time would work. And that's really one of the reasons that was voted down 7-2 at a previous board meeting. So now we have this motion that's been voted on 3 times, voted down with, again, we're getting back to the data, right? We have piles and piles of data supporting that this may work. And I'm not saying this is going to work, but it may. And there may be things that we tweak and it may not work. But there's data that suggests that it may work. And just like you had eloquently put with the food service, right? You have to look at data, you have to look at statistics and make an educated decision. We're a place of academia, and to just vote based off of feelings or what we think is right, or we don't like this, or we don't like that, it's truly troubling. So.
All right, so since I asked the question, you gave an eloquent answer. Thank you very much. I would like to say this about the Achievement Gap Committee's report. It is not a mandate. The board is not required to follow the recommendations made by the Achievement Gap Committee. They will not receive an award or a bribe of any kind if they choose to follow it, and they will not be punished or litigate against if they choose to not follow it. It is only a recommendation. There are no strings attached. Some committee did some amount of work, and it was good work, and they offered it with no strings attached for the board's consideration. The board then chewed on it, the administration then chewed on it, and we took the input from them, and here's where we are today. So we have no requirement to follow the recommendations of a committee that was formed in order to give recommendations to the board.
Can I make a comment? Are you done?
No, he raised his hand first, but then you have something to say. So thank you, Neil.
Yeah. Oh, I may speak? Thank you. Let me say this. You just said that Achievement Gap Committee, but it says right on it, Achievement Gap Committee recommended and estimated cost, recommendations and cost. And I'm here to tell you that hogwash. I mean, you could say whatever you want to call it. I don't want to call it Steve O'Donnell's either. That's why I didn't vote for that. But the answer is, I remember earlier tonight, we had a situation and I asked, so we've changed directions. And the answer to me was no. And I'm like, wait a second. We were looking for a full-time director. Now we're doing something different. We didn't change directions? Well, that's wrong. We did change directions. And I don't care. Maybe you can't figure it out, but we changed directions. That's the first thing. We changed direction.
And we were notified an hour ago.
When we changed direction, I guess we've decided that now this is a part-time position. Have we interviewed for our part-time people yet?
Our interviews have only been for the full time.
When we interview for different positions, sometimes it takes a little bit longer than a month to find a position? A particular position?
Yes.
So we're giving it these couple weeks and then that's it. We're just moving on. Like that's it. Like I don't know if we found the person, didn't find the person.
You do know, because you were in executive session, so don't lie. You do know.
Well, if you're telling me we found a person, I think that we should make the person that you think we found the full-time person then.
That's been voted down.
That person isn't available full-time. Maybe it could.
If you give the person the right amount of money, anybody's available.
Mr. Chairman.
Mister, we need to save money, and now you're going to open up an open checkbook?
What do you want to do?
You just told me wasn't available. I'm telling you that they may be.
Pardon?
I would like to know if,
Goes next and it goes back to me.
I would like to know if Mr. Short has interviewed.
So all I know is we voted the last time, and I didn't get a chance to speak. This has nothing to do with here's the problem with the board's having. Here's the problem that the board's having, and we have this problem often. People need to step away from your personal things. You need to be a board member for the Gateway School District. Any personal feelings that we have for anything matters not. Like, you people can't separate yourself from your position. Your position is to do what's right for Gateway, to follow the recommendation that was given to you. You people keep telling me that the recommendation of the GAP committee is this thing, and I got proof that it's not. So why do you say those things? You keep, I don't want to call anybody out, but I keep being told that there's a list of 6 or 7 things or whatever that we're supposed to do. Perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. I'm cool with those. But the recommendations for those are different. That's where we're losing sight of this. You need to step away You people are too personally involved in these things. You need to figure out what is the right thing to do. If you guys think that we have the right person, pay the person. Get the person in here. Let them do their work. Like, why are we trying to circumvent the system that we have in place? We just found out about all this just now, about changing everything, which we 7-2 said we were going to do a different way.
If this fails,
Okay.
Part-time.
Second, what?
Second part-time equity director.
A second part-time equity director.
correct, which I made the motion. So,
So let me speak to this, okay?
Sure, I'll let you speak.
I appreciate that. I've honestly never seen two gentlemen so disrupt the process than you two guys do. And I'm honestly disappointed in you. The Equity Committee made 7 recommendations, and you seem to forget all 7 of those recommendations. We made 7 recommendations. We made no recommendation to hire a full-time person, but we costed it out. Here are the 7 recommendations. I started off saying respectfully, let's just vote these issues. We have gone through this and litigated it over and over and over, yelling and screaming at me or anybody else, Neil. Going on for an hour, Chad, may not change anybody's vote. I just respectfully ask that we move to the vote. So it's over.
Hold on one second. So just to be
that's
clear,
my request.
Well, okay, but just to be clear.
Mary Beth's next, and then the chat.
No, John, you're not the board president. I respectfully would like to
But it was
rebut my motion.
Question. It was my question. Chad, we brought this up, and I asked you a question, so I do have the floor. Mary Beth, you're next. Thank you.
I would like to know if administration has found a candidate that they would recommend for this position.
But okay, so
Wait, let that go. Let that go.
That's a question for administration, Chad. That's not you. That would be a question for Mr. Short.
I know I'm still waiting to rebut
Mr.
Steve's
Chafee, and Mr.
false
Rossi,
information.
because Mr. Nola said administration didn't have any kind of recommendation. And I'd said that's not what I understood in executive session. So, Mr. Short, since Steve's motion passed for a consultant for the time being, do you have a candidate to recommend to the board?
This has nothing to do with the motion that we are now discussing, which
Just about a second.
correct for a second part-time equity
Okay,
director.
do
Which
you have a first or second candidate that would be part-time to recommend to the board?
we've not interviewed for a part-time. He had already admitted to that.
Right.
Can you let
Now-
him answer the question?
Go ahead. Just let them answer.
We have not interviewed for a part-time consulting position. However, we do have a candidate that expressed interest in performing the duties as a consultant.
But do you think it would be appropriate to, if we switch it, make a switch? I don't know. Maybe we didn't switch because I've been told tonight that we didn't switch. But if we happen to switch from full-time to part-time, would it maybe be appropriate to maybe interview people?
And resubmit it to PDE to see if a principal certification is even necessary. Going back to your
Just a question. I don't know. I think that if you're going to hire somebody, well, I can only work part-time. Well, yeah, I want you. Well, there may be 5,000 people out there that can do that job. Nothing personal against anybody.
And I do want to bring up some discrepancies in Steve's comment. So you said we voted on this plenty of times. We've discussed this at length. You know, let it go. You've never seen someone so disruptive.
Right.
You do understand that you are one of 2 individuals that voted against the CRP consultant, the diversity consultant, and the instructional coaching and tutoring. You do understand that, correct? Because that was a separate motion.
Because they don't represent the recommendations of the committee, but continue on, please.
The very
Just
thing,
get to
the very things,
Say what you need to say.
okay, the very things that are within your motion, Steve, you voted against when 7 members voted to look for a full-time equity director, right? And to clarify a point earlier, you actually start this motion off by saying we could not find, as advertised, a full-time equity director. Mrs. Cerrucci, you very accurately stated, the Pennsylvania Department of Education has stated if we cannot find a qualified individual, we may possibly be able to hire an individual that would then have 2 years to obtain the principal certification. Mrs. Crump, with that being said, did we have individuals that applied without a principal certification?
applications with principal certifications. We had one person that, due to their experience, we did consider.
Did we receive any other applications from individuals who did not?
I did not accept them.
Okay. So, but we've advertised this with the principal certification.
Yes.
We've sent this out to PDE, which I imagine we would have to do with this. And now we're not going to go back to an interview pool. We're just going to throw a name out there. I mean, guys, you somehow miraculously came across the idea that transparency is good since 2 weeks ago when you stated that was bad. I just ask that you look at this, and I as a board member didn't even know that we were going to part-time until I walked in that room. I texted Mrs. Crump and said, are we talking about a part-time? Because that was not part of the discussion. That was not what the board made a motion for. That was not what administration was seeking. And now we're coming back and saying it's part-time. If you want to talk about being disruptive, Steve, wouldn't you say 7 to 2 is, I don't know, pretty big vote? Right? You have no problem, as long as it's you going against the board, it's fine. It's not a problem. You have no problem voting against the transparency. You have no problem bringing up, right, we're going to talk about a tractor. We're going to buy a new tractor, I guess, for $27,000. We're going to hire this person for $55,000. But yet, the thing that is in your binder, in your agendas, that the most money was allocated to, we're actually cutting that. And we're putting 25% of that money towards that actual problem. So if you want to say who's being disruptive, please explain to us how we're being disruptive.
Any other comments, questions? We have a roll call, please.
Mr.
Second, equity
Hiring.
part-time director.
2 equity part-time.
Mr. O'Donnell?
No.
Mr. Ritter?
No.
Mr. Stubenbord?
Aye.
Mrs. Warning?
No.
Mr. Williams?
No.
Mrs. Cerrucci?
No.
Mr. Lapsevich?
It's for 2 part-time.
A second
Yes,
part,
sir.
a second part.
Well, I'd rather went for full-time, but,
It's not the vote, George.
yeah.
Mr. Nola?
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to, I'd like to do one of 2 things. I'll ask the board. Either a motion to adjourn, okay, and we'll attend to these other issues later if the board would like to. Or I'll make a motion to empower the administration to reach out and implement the proposal that was put on the table and approved. And we already know that he has a candidate in mind to go out and negotiate the terms and conditions of that agreement and then submit that to the board. So with
I
the
would be
board.
in favor of your second.
All right, so then I will, that's my motion, okay?
Can you say that
Bonnie
again?
did not get that.
I don't quite.
All right, I move that the administration, help me out here, Bruce, the administration be empowered to implement the proposal that was passed, to go out and hire the appropriate personnel consistent with the motion that I put on the floor, which would include the beginning of an equity director.
And implement
And implementing.
the proposal.
And implement the proposal, and then I would like you to circulate the terms and conditions that you agree to with those individuals with the board.
So that this does not come back up to the board for a vote, or are you?
I don't think it needs to come back up to the board. We've
Well,
passed
we're empowering
it.
him to just go ahead and hire
Okay,
somebody
go
else
ahead
to
and
do those
hire.
numbers.
We've already laid this out in the proposal. There's a proposed budget in there. I think you should follow the proposed budget and move on. So moved.
Just second it first. Second.
Motion by Mr. O'Donnell, second by Ms.
Now you
Cerrucci.
can discuss.
Questions, comments on the motion?
I have a question. We just passed a transparency policy. Does that fall under that?
It's nothing new.
I think it does.
So he would need a supermajority for that to pass?
Yeah.
Very good. I make a motion that we call to vote.
Second.
Not enough votes for it to pass.
Bruce.
I need 6 of them.
That didn't, well, there's other questions on several motions he just raised. So it either can't have to apply to the goose, has to apply to the gander.
We can scratch them for the record if that makes
It never
sense.
was raised. You know, the question becomes.
The policy was on the table.
Parliamentary procedure.
Yeah, the policy's on the table.
Which policy?
The transparency,
It was actually
the
approved.
part-time policy.
It was actually approved.
So those motions were raised and not consistent. For purposes of this evening, we ought to be consistent with that practice.
I agree. We should scratch all motions that I made.
5-4. You can't undo it. You can't unring a bell.
I can show you video if you do.
I think that you've passed a policy that says if you're going to introduce something new, you've got to let the board see it for 7 days. And that's what you did. And to not implement it tonight, well, then when do we start implementing it? Next month? I mean, once you pass that and it's in place, I think you have to live by that. It doesn't take away from the fact of what you've said, Steve, and Mr. Short. You can take a direction from that. You just can't make a formal offer until next month.
At the
study
That's right. At the study session.
Okay, that's acceptable.
Because you're giving them the 7 days notice right now, Steve. So the days start to run from tonight. And 7 days from now, if you want to convene a meeting and appoint that person.
Bruce, I'll be okay with that.
So we're just
Let's go
scratching
on.
that motion and second.
So the motion's withdrawn pursuant to a procedural problem.
Okay. All right. Move on.
Tractor.
Tractor. It's tractor time, which is also my recommendation. When we get to it. Can I take that, Mr. President? Sure. Okay. I move that we approve the purchase of a Ventrac 4500 Kubota lawn tractor through PA Co-Stars from Fletcher's Outdoor Power Equipment in the amount of $26,506. I can have a second?
I second.
Okay.
The Mr. O'Donnell, second by Mr. Stewart. Questions, comments?
I make a motion to table this since we
The
just
purpose, can I
got this.
discuss?
You gotta wait for it.
Okay.
I make a motion.
Motion to table, roll call vote, please.
Doesn't have to
Have
be
to have
seconded.
second.
Oh, sorry. Is there a second for table? Motion fails. Go ahead, Mr. O'Donnell.
Okay, we're asking the board, as part of the George and Valerie and myself, and what's your name out there, Bob? We have 3 or 4 very, very steep hills that we pay $1,500 a cut, if my memory serves me correctly. And then in seasons like this, it grows back in 2 or 3 weeks and it looks terrible. So this is part of an initiative to continue to maintain the campus in an appropriate fashion. This piece of equipment can do all that we need it to do, up, down, sideways, backwards, on steep grades, and it will, and it can be driven by one of our employees. And I don't, is there anything else to add to it? That's it.
So we don't need to hire any additional workers to operate the equipment?
Oh, do we have a cost analysis? I know this wasn't on the study session. Do we have a cost analysis as to, I know you said $1,500 a cut, what the maintenance of this is? Because I know we had actually hired another person 2 years ago to help maintain oiling and other things of equipment. So what the actual cost for manpower for our individuals to do it, what the cost of this is, I mean.
I think Bob Brown told me that this would pay for itself in 5 years, something like that sort, and probably the life of the equipment is much, much longer.
And we're currently contracting somebody to cut it,
Right.
but not as frequently as we would like.
Shush.
Not as frequently as we would like.
That's correct.
How many times a year are they coming in now?
We have it at this time 4 times a year, which it's not up to the standards that the Buildings and Ground Committee and the administration would like it to be kept.
Well, can you step up to the microphone for sure?
I was asked to look into keeping this area at a higher standard than it has been currently kept. We did approve monies 4 times a year to cut that particular area, not the area along
Boulevard?
Gateway Campus Boulevard and on Route 48 by the Huntington Bank. We also have Evergreen, which we have spent monies to trim down and keep in a much better condition. And this piece of equipment is designed specifically to cut those extremely steep banks. We've tried some others. We've had different demonstrations in. Myself, I have driven them. My assistant has driven them. This is the only machine that we were able to find at a somewhat reasonable number that can do that safely.
How many hours would it take per cut?
With this machine, once he gets comfortable on it, the hillside along Gateway Campus, just to give you something to compare it to, roughly 3 hours.
And what is hourly pay with benefits? Since we didn't have any of this information prior.
$30, $35 with benefits.
That's just to do one of them? You got two more to do?
There's some other hillsides.
There's other hillsides, but as a comparison to give you, that hill out there you can visualize, and it's.
Is this something that needs purchased today? Because I saw it was just recently cut, or could this wait?
It was to be opened up for school. That was not my decision. I was just asked to find a piece of equipment to do it, but it'll be grown back here in short order.
Like 2 weeks or so?
Depending on the weather that we get, and lately we've had a lot of rain and sunshine, it's faster than it has been in years past. So
The committee just felt, we've been woefully inadequate over the last number of years in terms of picking up the pieces of equipment and sometimes attending to the issues that need to be attended to maintain the campus in an attractive fashion. As Scotty says all the time, we're always up for sale, and he's right about that. So we've had to purchase truck in the past. It's really given our main campus time to go out and purchase a piece of equipment like this. It pays for itself, but regardless, we need it. If we need 6, 8, 9 cuts a year, then we're able to do it, and the community, I think, will value the appearance.
Just to clarify, when Mr. O'Donnell says, I say we're up for sale, it doesn't mean Gateway's for sale. It means if your house is for sale, you want your house to look good. I'm using Gateway, we're up for sale every day. We want to look our best. So when somebody comes and looks at a house here and decides to look at the school, our schools look very presentable. That's what he means when I say we're up for sale.
That's exactly what I said.
I agree, and I think those are all good points. Again, just kind of wish we would have had this earlier. But just so the public's aware, we're basically throwing as much money to a Hillside's grass as we are the equity gap, achievement gap.
Mr. Brown, do you have this in the budget?
I do not. This was just asked of me recently.
We talked with Bill about this. If it needs to come out of the $3.819 million budget, the capital budget, it can. We're running a surplus for the close of last year. We ran a $3.2 million surplus. We can afford $26,000, $27,000 to keep the place looking decent.
Quick question, the growing season's going to end in about a month, right? And then we're going to have the winter season and then spring. So would it be useful to try to delay this for a couple of months from a capital
Well, I think
purchase?
the growing season's it extends more than September.
So it would be
around
useful
here.
to buy it now then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you buy now, when we take delivery?
They have one, so unless somebody has purchased it in the interim, it would be within a few weeks.
Would board members all be allowed to drive the tractor up and down?
Once I talked to Mr. Schott on insurance regulations.
Because it looks like a fun piece of equipment to drive. It's articulated.
Any other questions or comments? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
I'm voting against it.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenbort.
I guess.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
I got a question for Mr. Brown. How many bids did you get on that tractor?
This is CoStarz. We looked at the folks that handle these type of equipment.
Yeah.
Primarily E.H. Griffith and Fletcher's that have carried it. There's very few of these types of machines. The only other one that we could find that could do it was a lot more money through E.H. Griffith. It was a Toro. We found out that this particular machine has been used by Westmoreland County Parks and Recreation, City of Pittsburgh, Norwin School District. That's why we brought in these folks to show us what they had. The other lesser cost machines, I felt very uncomfortable cutting those hills. I was on them myself. There's just not a whole lot of this type of equipment out there available. So we went to two primary folks that handle these type of equipment.
Okay. Did you check into goats or anything?
Goats? I don't think that would be part of Monroeville's.
They'll be more reasonable.
Maybe, and fertilize as well.
How big of a spread does that cut?
It has a 6-foot cutting surface.
Okay, thank you.
George, yes or
Mr.
no?
Brown, real quick,
Yes or
can you
no?
explain CoStarz for the public?
Yes. CoStarz is a purchasing group that these folks already bid these items through the state. Therefore, we are not required to rebid them out to the public. They've already gone through that process, and by doing that, we can purchase through that and a few other type of buying groups that just save us time and money for public bids. They've already gone through that process.
That's similar to the phone system, right?
We're voting.
George, yes or no? George, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Nola?
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Oh, really?
Yes. Come on, Scott.
Motion carries. Any other resolutions by board members?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn and a second.
Before, if I could say one thing about
Of course.
okay.
Is this a public announcement?
Yes. So, 10 years ago today, we lost a Gateway student, Demi Braid Kusha, close with the family. So before we adjourn, and I just want to send our thoughts and prayers with the Kusha family. I know this is always a difficult time, a day after what would have been her 26th birthday. So it was a horrible tragedy. Thankful very much for Jody and Mr. Kusha, or Dr. Kusha, for putting so much time and effort into really making sure that Demi's life goes and is remembered. I'm sure they've saved countless lives and have done a fabulous job of educating the students of the Gateway School District about dating violence. So I just wanted to throw that out there and say, the Kusha family, thank you for everything you do, and our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Yep.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed signify same sign.
Aye.
We're adjourned.